Nvidia stock had an amazing day with the stock up over 2%, and we're so close to being the #1 largest public company in the world. On today's episode, what I want to do is take a closer look at some news impacting AI stocks, more importantly Nvidia. And in the past few days, there was actually a pretty cool podcast where Jensen, the CEO of Nvidia, mentioned some amazing things that I think Nvidia investors should know. Now, I did talk about Nvidia almost being the #1 largest company, and I've heard rumors that if you hit the thumbs up and subscribe button and check out the pinned comment for special offers, the chances of it getting there increase. I'm not sure how true that is, but all jokes aside, let's get started with today's episode.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so we can see Nvidia finished the day at $138.07, sitting at a market cap of nearly $3.4 trillion. Now, it is reported that with this market cap, Nvidia is now the second most valuable publicly traded US company behind Apple at about $3.55 billion. So who knows, maybe if we have another great day like today and Apple has not that great of a day, we can definitely make it to the #1 list. Now, before I take a closer look at that podcast that I mentioned earlier on, I want to look at some recent news impacting Nvidia. Now, I think one important topic to cover is to try to understand what other companies are doing with AI solutions. And a big player in the generative AI space right now is Adobe. And recently, Adobe is holding their Adobe Max, which is kind of a creative conference. And in this creative conference, they are announcing a lot of products, and some of these products are improvements of their current generative AI solutions, or they're releasing new solutions in that space as well. The great thing is all these solutions are accelerated by Nvidia's RTX and GeForce RTX GPUs in the cloud or running locally on an AI PC or workstation. So right off the bat, we can see that Nvidia solutions are being used all over the place. And one of the most highly anticipated feature is Generative Extend in Premiere Pro Beta, which is a form of video solution that Adobe has. And it uses generative AI to seamlessly add frames to the beginning or end of the clip, powered by the Firefly video model. So this is pretty interesting. We can see how Adobe is now moving outside of just kind of the image model generative AI, and is now focusing more on video models, which obviously needs a lot more computational power, needs more inferencing as well. So that obviously bodes well for the demand of AI chip solutions. So I think it's going to be good for Nvidia in the long term of things. Now, Adobe is not a company that I own right now, so I don't cover it too much. So just curious where the stock is at right now, $509. Year to date, the stock is actually down roughly 12%. Maybe Adobe should be one we take a closer look at. Let me know in the comments below if Adobe is one that we should do a deep dive and kind of discuss maybe valuations at this point, as obviously generative AI and AI in general can be really strong for companies like Adobe that create a lot of creative software solutions. Now, focusing on another news, CoreWeave, which is a huge provider, a huge AI cloud provider, just recently closed a financing deal of $650 million. This is reported by Bloomberg. Obviously, CoreWeave is a big player in the AI cloud market. They are one of the first players to actually have the H200. CoreWeave was one of the first providers, is the first cloud provider to deploy Nvidia's H200 Tensor Core GPUs. So this is a company backed by Nvidia. Nvidia does have investment here. But what I like to see is obviously if they are raising more money, they're most likely raising that money to build more AI data centers to increase their cloud solution. So a lot of that money will most likely head over to Nvidia. Now, another topic that I want to cover before we hit the final news here about that podcast, there are reports that Google signs a nuclear SMR deal with Kairos for data center power. Initial deployment could begin in 2030, scale to 500 megawatts. Now, this is pretty interesting, right? Because SMR is still a technology that's being developed, but we can see how the market is going into this segment within the nuclear power, right? There's other types of nuclear power, but it seems like a lot are focusing in SMR. The other thing is this is something that begins in 2030. So when I look at news like this and then kind of signing these deals, and obviously we don't know the actual agreement, it's just an agreement to purchase, but the company needs to provide the solutions as well. But it tells me that, hey, look, Google and all these other players are thinking multiple years ahead, right? So it's not like they're going to be done building data centers now. They're most likely going to still continue to build crazy data centers in 2030. And that's why they're signing deals like that as well. So there's kind of this bearish case that, hey, look, eventually no one's going to need NVIDIA solutions or the demand's going to die down. But when you hear news like that, I think that can help kind of fight that bearish scenario. Now, the final thing I want to take a closer look at is this very important podcast that just came out. But this is the BG2 pod, and Jensen talked with unfortunately, I've never heard of them, but it was a great conversation. It was over an hour long, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I mean, Jensen talks about kind of the competitive landscape, about the future of AI, and one thing that he mentions here is if you just want to watch this segment, I think every NVIDIA stock investor should watch this podcast. It's a no-brainer. You get to learn more about Jensen. You get to learn more about the future of AI and how it's evolving at such a rapid pace. And you can kind of also understand the demand that we can potentially see in the future. But one thing that really should grab the mind of investors is around the 50-minute mark, he starts talking about inference scaling, and we continue to see it here in 56. And especially with OpenAI and their recently released O1 Strawberry model, it has kind of completely shifted the world. Now, for those that are not familiar, let's take a step back. So OpenAI recently, a few weeks ago, released their OpenAI O1 model. And this model is kind of trained to think. And what ends up happening is this model has kind of like a chain of thought where it's kind of running over and over again, kind of thinking process to really get the perfect answer. And it's done amazing for things like analyzing and solving problems. The great thing about this, if you are an NVIDIA investors, is it can scale. It's now kind of scaling the inference computing power. And that is one of the main reasons when OpenAI released this model. And to this date, this model, you can only use it a selected amount of times per day. It's not unlimited use because I'm pretty sure it's pretty expensive. Now, this O1 model that they released is only thinking for a few seconds. But this kind of work, a super researcher at OpenAI mentions that OpenAI's O1 thinks for seconds, but we aim for future versions to think for hours, days, even weeks. Inference cost will be higher. But what cost would you pay for a new cancer drug, for breakthrough batteries, for various hypothesis solution? AI can be more than chatbots. So this alone showcases the huge demand for AI inferencing. And for those that are not familiar, NVIDIA, roughly 40% of their revenue in AI accelerated units right now comes from the inference market. So this inference market is expected to 100x, even 1000x by the need of computational power that they need right now. So if that is true, can you guess what's gonna happen to NVIDIA's revenue? That's right, NVIDIA's revenue can really grow thanks to this man. And Jensen pretty much talks about it here, where no one's really thinking about that right now, and no one's really talking about that. And maybe investors and Wall Street is missing that because of this new type of training solution that is happening with AI models. The demand for AI compute, especially in the inferencing space, where Jensen and NVIDIA solutions are already a big market player, the amount can grow dramatically. So I'm super excited. I mean, we're starting earnings seasons right now. In this upcoming week, I believe we're gonna finally get the first popular earnings, and we're gonna most likely hear from CapEx and big tech players that CapEx is gonna continue to stay high, and they're gonna continue to invest in AI solutions. So I mean, I want to say about 6 months ago, NVIDIA at this price point, I believe about 6 months ago, we were sitting somewhere around here. Yeah, in early June, maybe more like 4 months ago, but we were sitting in that high 130s. I think back then, and I mentioned it in those videos, that I was getting a little bit worried of valuation, right? I was a little bit getting scared that, hey, look, the stock was getting a little too ahead of itself. And I'm happy I did those videos because we definitely got better buying opportunities over time. We can see in August 7th, we got buying opportunities of below $100. We also saw similar in early September. I want to say that just as the world changes, just as we continue to see more demand, this 138, in my opinion, is very different from where we saw it about 4 months ago. I think this is, I'm not too worried about valuation now as I was 4 months ago around this price target. That by no means means that the stock price won't go down, right? The market always humiliates us, I think is the proper term, or the one I'm looking for, or really kind of brings us back down to earth. So I'm not saying that I don't see the stock price ever going down. I do believe the stock price will go down. I believe the stock market will give us buying opportunities. And for me, these levels are still, like I mentioned before, small dollar cost averaging opportunities. But this time, I'm not as worried as I was in the past in forms of valuation. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Let me hear your thoughts. We have earnings, I want to say maybe a month and a half from now. So I'm pretty excited. And this is going to be the best place you're going to find this news. Take care. Have a good day and see you next time.